Hey everyone, I'm Gaming. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to Monster Analysis. Up for analysis today is Yiltre. Yiltre can see the future, the past, and many worlds at the same time without moving. His age is a mystery, but it is known that he has been seeing things and selling information to powerful lords for centuries, but that indiscretion has also brought him many enemies. And so here we have Yiltre, who based on the description is apparently a very powerful, knowledgeable monster, but I mean, who really cares about the design, right? As long as this monster is good, we're gonna use it. With that being said, this monster's competition is 23 other nature legendary monsters, so I'm gonna be comparing Yiltre to those monsters. Starting off with power, Yiltre has a power of 3,355, which actually puts him in 11th place, not a pretty high power for nature monsters. As for life, it has 30,461, putting him in 6th place, tied with General Alces, so it's a pretty good life stat. And lastly, his speed is 3,476, which is tied for 1st place along with monsters like Sarah and Lamu, so this monster is now in contender for being the fastest legendary nature monster. And what makes this monster unique is the trait Abomination, immunity to possession, nightmares, and bleed. It's a really great trait to have. In the nature category, it really helps against Lamu, who has a single possession. It doesn't help so much against Sarah, who has a single stun, but hey, at least you're protected against Lamu. And on that note, you also have immunity to bleed, which lots of nature monsters also tend to have. And so anyways, moving on to the ultimate attack, I Win, deals massive nature damage to all enemies, may blind all targets, healing effects hurt target for 3 turns. This ultimate attack deals 70 nature-based damage to all of the enemy monsters. The 70 nature-based damage doesn't matter too much considering this monster is going to be running all speed runes, no strength runes whatsoever, not an attacker, and it's an AoE blind as well as an AoE plague. Now plague is the perfect skill to use against nature monsters. Can you imagine if you're facing General Alces and it has plague on, all of its teammates have plague, and it does that skill that recovers 100% of life? That's an auto kill. It's automatically going to die thanks to plague. And obviously it'll also work wonders if the enemy nature monster has a skill that's life regeneration, a team life regeneration, or a team life heal. It's like plague is just really good against nature monsters. On top of that, it also applies blind, which reduces the enemy's accuracy by 50%, thus reducing the likelihood of them landing attacks on you. So overall, it's a pretty good ultimate for this monster. And anyhow, moving on over to skills group 1, here it comes. It's a self skill that removes your own debuffs, and it also gives you energy regeneration. And honestly, I'm not sure why I'm mentioning this skill. It would realistically only come in handy if you were to get possessed by a skill that bypasses possession, something like Hackster or Glitch, what they can do. But even in that situation, I don't think it's worth running this self skill when you're foregoing other skills, just for those small instances where you're going up against a Glitch or a Hackster, or whatever monster comes out in the future that can bypass possession. So moving on over to I See Your Problem, applies 1 random negative effect to target, requires cooldown. Here we have an AoE skill that costs 26 stamina, has a 1 turn cooldown, and it applies 1 random negative effect. This can be a pretty good skill because it deals no damage, and since you're not going to be running strength runes, you don't really worry about damage. The 1 turn cooldown is what's cool about this skill. However, it's random negative effects. Do you want to rely on random negative effects? It's completely up to you. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan of this skill. You could run it, don't get me wrong, you could definitely run this if you ever were to use this monster on defense, but considering the AI could do this twice in a game, it could really work out to your benefit. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to personal preference, and I think he has better skills. This monster actually has a lot of usable skills depending on the scenario, so I don't think I See Your Problem is worth running. That being said, however, it comes down to preference. You could use it if you want to, especially in place of another skill from skills group 3 that has a higher cooldown and just does a little something extra. And so with that being said, let's talk about skills group 2. And let me just say, this monster is rather complicated because you could potentially use all of these skills, different versions of these skills. Like if you're the kind of player that had the gems to remove skills in place of different skills and to remove runes, then you could really utilize this monster. However, I think most players won't be doing that. So let's just talk about the first skill and I'll tell you guys what I mean. Look at me now, removes all negative status effects from allies and gives them immunity to possession and nightmares. Now the thing about this skill is that it appears to be a team skill, but it says it targets a single ally. Based on the fact that the icon actually says area and the description says gives allies an immunity, I'm gonna assume it's a team skill. So this can remove all debuffs, which is really good, especially against nature monsters. You know, I mentioned Sarah. Sarah can stun one of your allies, Lamu can possess one of your allies, lots of nature monsters can do AoE poison, AoE bleed, so removing debuffs can really come in handy, and you also give immunity to possession. If you go before a Lamu, well, this really helps you out because Lamu won't be able to possess anyone. In a scenario where you go up against a Hackster or a Glitch or any nature monster or any magic monster with an AoE possession, any dark monster with an AoE possession, you really want to have this skill. Protect your whole team from possession, that is awesome. And on the upside, you also get immunity to nightmares, which can help you out, I guess, mostly against dark monsters. And so like I said, it just really depends on the scenario. If you're not facing monsters with possession, this becomes a rather useless skill. Not completely useless because you can still remove debuffs, but considering Lamu is the main threat with a possession skill and it's only a single possession, again this kind of becomes a rather useless skill. Yeah, you can remove debuffs, but you're going to see other skills can also remove debuffs. So in the right scenario it could work really well. Most of the time it may not work well, and the more I think about it, it has a 0 turn cooldown. So I'm assuming it actually is a single ally and not a team skill. So yeah, this might actually end up being a single ally skill, in which case it's even worse. Like the best play if it is a single ally skill would be like if you're facing a hackster and you do this skill to protect the one monster you don't want hacked. You make sure it's immune to possession, it can't get hacked, and then your hackster does AoE hack, you get hacked, your other teammate gets hacked, but they're one monster, your attacker probably isn't going to get hacked, and then your attacker can take out the enemy attacker. Like, see, in those scenarios it can work. But for the most part, I don't see it working, so it's going to be up to you whether or not you want to run this skill. Next up we have You Feel Weaker, deals moderate special damage, hitting effects hurt target for 3 turns. So this skill deals 40 special base damage to a single enemy, 27 stamina cost, no cooldown, and it applies Plague. Plague is essentially negative healing, monsters will heal life, monsters who heal life will lose life instead of healing. And this is, in my opinion, a must-have when you're fighting nature monsters, just because of all the different healings they can do, whether it's self-healing, whether it's team healing, whether it's life regeneration, self-life regeneration, any sort of healing, Plague takes care of it, so definitely run this skill. Next up is I See Your Destiny, deals low nature damage to all enemies, removes all positive effects from targets, and gives weakness to dark, requires cooldown. Here we have an AoE that deals 25 nature based damage, 39 stamina cost, 2 turn cooldown. Not only does it remove good effects, so this is really good to remove life regeneration from nature monsters, however this works against the Plague if you use Plague. But anyways, removes good effects and dark weakness, so this is a really good setup skill if you have a dark monster on your team. And this goes back to what I said, if you're the kind of player that has gems to move skills around, this is one skill you may want to consider using in certain situations, specifically when you have a dark ally on your team. If you don't have a dark ally, well, this skill essentially just becomes removes good effects from the enemy team while dealing a low 25 nature based damage. Not the best skill if you don't have a dark ally on your team. And even if you do have a dark ally on your team, keep in mind that if you're setting up with this monster, well then you better have another main denier. And if you don't have a main denier, you can't really fully utilize this skill. So it's a little complicated with this monster. Look at Me Now can be pretty situational, especially if it only affects a single ally as opposed to your team, and I See Your Destiny has the capacity to be very powerful, but only if you have a dark attacker in your team, as well as a main denier. And so with that said, moving on over to Skills Group 3, I Am So Shiny, deals moderate special damage to all enemies, may blind all targets, requires cooldown. Here we have an AoE that deals 30 special base damage, costs 35 stamina, has a 1 turn cooldown, and it's an AoE blind. And this is definitely a must-have skill. I've said it before in previous videos, the next best thing to an AoE immobilizing skill is an AoE blind, because that reduces the likelihood of the enemy landing hits. If the enemy does an AoE, that's a 40% accuracy. If they do a single target hit, that's only a 45% accuracy. Most likely they're going to be missing. Of course they may not always miss, but like I said, it's the next best thing, and of course it lasts 2 turns. Definitely use this skill. Next up we have I Will Find You, deals heavy nature damage, may stun target, requires cooldown. This skill targets a single enemy, dealing 50 nature based damage, costs 20 in stamina, has a 1 turn cooldown, and it's a stun skill. Now the thing about this monster having a stun skill, that's awesome, especially combined with his amazing 3-4-7-6 speed, that's awesome. Now, if you go up against a Sarah's immune to stun. Of course you can still immobilize your teammates, however Sarah could potentially stun one of your teammates, or your Yeltree itself, so against Sarah it's not that helpful. If you're going up against a Lamu, keep in mind that Lamu is hardened, so if you try to stun Lamu, there's a chance she'll get away and maybe she'll possess one of your teammates. If you try to face a General Alcis, well, Alcis is tough, there's a 35% chance the stun won't land. And those monsters I just named, those are probably the main ones you'll run into on defense. Probably not Sarah so much, but usually it'll be a Lamu or a General Alcis. So it's nice that you have a stun, but just keep in mind, those nature monsters specifically, you won't have the best chance at stunning them. Most of the time it will land, but not always. But of course you still have the chance to immobilize other teammates, all is not lost. It's still a 95% accuracy stun skill, so maybe you can immobilize someone else, but the main point I want to mention is that you may not be able to immobilize Lamu, who will probably be the main denier on the enemy team, and General Alcis, you probably won't be able to immobilize him, who will probably be the main attacker if they choose to use him. And in those situations where you fight Sarah, you're definitely not going to be able to immobilize her because she's 100% immune to stun, which means Sarah will probably be able to immobilize one of your teammates. But heck, who says you have to start off with a single stun? You could always do the AoE blind, hope it lands on the next turn, stun whoever you need to. And then lastly we have Mirror of the Soul, which I guess is essentially the upgraded version of Skills Group 1, however some may say it's not upgraded because of the cooldown. Anyways, this skill deals moderate special damage to all enemies, applies 1 random negative effect to target, removes all negative status effects from all allies, requires cooldown. And so this skill deals 30 special base damage to all of the enemy monsters, 39 stamina cost, 3 turn cooldown, which is exceptionally high, and anyways, it gives them 1 random negative effect, and it also removes all negative effects from your allies, and this is the reason I think this skill is worth running over skills group 1. Even though you can use the skills group 1 skill twice in the time that you can only use this skill once, the fact that this skill removes all negative status effects from your allies is the reason you should use this skill. Because like I mentioned previously, against nature monsters, you're prone to being possessed, you're prone to being stunned, most often you're going to be poisoned or bleeding, so this is a really good skill to get rid of those negative effects. At the same time, you can also apply one random negative effect to the enemy team, so heck, you never know, you may get lucky. So I personally would recommend Mirror of the Soul. However, if you really don't like that 3-turn cooldown, if you don't care about the damage output, if you don't care about removing negative effects, then in that case you can run I See Your Problem. But as for skills, this is where it becomes really hard because, like I said, I Am So Shiny, this is probably a must-have. You Feel Weaker, it's a must-have against nature monsters. I Will Find You, it's really good to have a stun skill. Mirror of the Soul, it's a pretty good skill, but at the same time, if you start the game off with AoE Blind, and you follow it up with a Plague or a Stun, when do you really have the chance to utilize an AoE random negative effects? Like, how often do you want to use negative effects? Like, it's really good when you need to remove negative effects from your team, but other than that, I don't know if you want to risk using random negative effects when you can do that guaranteed stun, that AoE blind, or that plague. So as far as for running skills, the one I'm most confident about is I Am So Shiny. You should definitely run this. Next up would probably be You Feel Weaker, and next up would be I Will Find You. And then my personal choice would be Mirror of the Soul. That doesn't however mean these two skills are useless. Again, it really just depends. And quite honestly, you can just use any combination of these 6 skills and you'll probably have yourself a pretty decent monster. The one skill overall you should probably have is I Am So Shiny. AoE Blind, you definitely want that. If you can't AoE Immobilize, next best thing is a Blind. So if you run this monster with 3 speedruns, which you probably should, just start the game off with AoE Blind and then follow it up with whatever you need to. And I'm sorry I really can't say much more. Again, this monster, the skills are just really dependent on the situation. Weakness to dark, okay, if you have a dark monster. Immunity to possession, okay, if you're facing monsters that have possession. Even You Feel Weaker to an extent. If you face a Lamu, for example, she has like one skill that's a self-heal. Like, do you really need to use Plague? If you're facing an Altis, I'd say definitely. But what if he doesn't use that 100% heal skill on the one monster you Plague? So, very situational skills. If you have the gems to move around skills to certain situations, this could potentially be a really powerful monster. For the casual player though, I don't know how successful this monster will be. And so with that being said, that is going to conclude my analysis on Yiltre. Please let me know what you thought about the video, and more importantly, please let me know what you think about this monster. Do you think he's good? Do you think he's not so good? How do you think he compares to Sarah and Lamu specifically? Do you think it's a really good monster to bring into war, or not that great of a monster? Are you better off with Lamu? Are you better off with Sarah? Whatever your thoughts are, let me know in the comments below. Also, what I really want to know is what skill set would you run on this monster and why? What skill? Seriously. What made you choose one skill over the other? Please let me know in the comments below. I am really curious to hear your guys' thoughts on this monster. And with that being said, I'm RRabbits. Like always, remember to dream big and pursue your passions.